some shit like
Well,
that.
that's why I was thinking, like, I mean, I was thinking to myself, I was like, maybe he's saying this shit because like he, like he wants me to like, join his flag football league. That's what it sound like, you know.
Maybe his
So,
team sucks. Trying to
so
recruit.
I was like, dude, I mean, I may look like I played football and shit. Fucking do not know how to do that shit well. So, either way, I had a conversation with him and shit like that, and he's like, yeah, here's the email for the league and stuff like that. So I guess it's some serious shit. So I asked him, I was like, how long you been in this league? He was like, yeah, I started like 10 years ago and shit. So I was like, okay. I was like, was you trying to partner up? No, I'm good actually. What is I said? What the fuck was the point for you asking me about join? Take a look at my. I
I
was
don't
like,
know, man. Maybe they tip the guy if he brings in new recruits or something. There ain't no telling.
probably. That's what I was thinking, but I don't think so. But I was like, what the fuck ever, man. I was like, I'm not dealing with people, because like after you cut people off and shit like that, it's like that leaves your schedule fucking wide open, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, even though I don't fuck with those people, it was just like I was still, there was a scheduling for the timing, of me not fucking with them. Anyway, I wanted to kind of start off with that kind of phrasing. So there's a couple of subjects I want to talk about here. You may not know this, but apparently, Nvidia had a big show regarding their GPUs. So you've heard of the TI whatever 3000 or whatever the fuck it is. I don't really give a fuck.
RTX 3000
RTX
series.
3800. What was the T? Yeah, the TI, whatever it is. So supposedly, um, it it used to be like $1,000 GPU. So they have like this mid-range GPU for like
Mm-hmm.
$699, and then like the world went wild. Oh wow! Like all these Xbots start talking. They're like, you know what? I think I'm gonna get a piece. I'm gonna get that over the PlayStation 5. And I'm like, where the fuck did the power narrative go? You was talking about 12 teraflops, and basically that's the equivalent of like I think it was like 24 or 36 teraflops. With all of ray tracing twice as fast as their predecessor. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you can do ray tracing at like full on path traced. Like the whole scene is ray traced at 1440p without any type of reconstruction and shit like that. Um, and it was running at 30 frames per second, but that was just like raw power. You know what I'm saying? So looking at that, they have the DSLL, which is their reconstruction technique with AI.
Well, they. I'm looking at. Apparently, someone made an OT thread about it, but just looking at it, there's three of them. Okay, that
Hmm.
that they released. You got the 3070, which is $500, the 3080, which is $700, and then the 3090, which is $1,500. So, I mean, yeah, are they badass video cards capable of like brute forcing some crazy performances? Most definitely. But I mean, like how many, especially with the coronavirus thing, and fucking everyone signing up for unemployment and shit. I mean, how many people
Man, people are
realistically
so
would buy a card like
irresponsible.
that?
You can't even say that, man. People are super irresponsible, so you can't even use that narrative.
Well, they're even more irresponsible. Irresponsibility is at its maximum now, but
But you know, there was some talk about the Series X doing like crazy ray tracing, and people were like, "Yo, the ray tracing does not
mm,
it's not the same calculations. You can't say that." You know. Either way, my whole question to that is, really about the ray tracing. No, because we already talked about that. We talked about the ray tracing the last time when we were like, how much of an impact does it have? So I guess my real question is, what the fuck are people talking about? Are they gonna buy this chip? How you look at PC gaming? I'll tell you that. let's say that you get the mid ranger for the GPU. Like, how do you vision, gaming on PC, even if you have the brute force to it? Like, what would be your reasoning for it, or the pros and cons?
Um, I mean, it's if you're willing to put in the time, there's a payoff there, and especially like a simple example is, there are games that you can go back to that they may allow like ray tracing to be available. So I think like Metro Exodus, The Witcher 3 apparently is you'll be able to run ray tracing, if you're using an Nvidia card, or whichever one of them. So in a nutshell, like there is what the developer is capable of doing and the bells and whistles that they put in their game, and then there is stuff that's actually based on like either Nvidia or AMD, and maybe certain like special bell and whistles that they have that you can run that's independent of what the developer does with their game. So like a quick example, Path of Exile, they added some stuff prior league or league before it. They got the Vulkan program, which I think that's AMD, and then they have like something called dynamic culling, and it has to do with particle effects and how you can kind of reduce like how many frames they permeate or whatever. So there are
Yeah,
things that
if anybody doesn't know what calling is, it does not render things that are blocked by other things. So if you have a particle in front of another particle, the one behind it won't get rendered, and that saves on GPU time and stuff like that. But go on.
so 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 in a nutshell, like of course in that case grinding your games they had to kind of put that in there, but like you have certain like I remember you had AMD and they had their Mantle program as well, but basically each kind of company will have their own bells and whistles that they can kind of implement that's separate, from what the developer does. And then, of course, sometimes you can have, a kind of cooperative work.
But I guess
Um,
you're talking about. I'm saying, what's your viewpoint on gaming on PC if you have rigs of that nature?
um, well, it
Do
just
you
there.
would you go to PC? And my question is,
I do both if I had the money, but no, I mean with PC, PC is it's a double-edged sword. It's you kind of have to make the more of an investment, and you kind of have to understand like how to set things up and how to troubleshoot, when you're having certain issues. But of course, if you have that knowledge or investment, there is a payoff there. It's because it's a personal computer. You're not playing off of, someone else's operating system, like Sony or Microsoft or whatever. So in a sense, you're able to kind of do more things or have more kind of independent freedom with how you kind of tweak your gaming experience. In a nutshell,
I mean,
like
no,
like
but
when
that's
when
not, but
when
that's you're giving me a generalized. What I'm saying, you personally, you personally.
um, well, I mean I mean, I know I'm speaking as a generalized way, but I mean that is kind of how I kind of look at it, how or what I value. Something as simple as just being able to swap out what kind of controller I want to use. Like, hey, this game I use keyboard and mouse, or hey, I'm gonna get this game and I'm gonna use a fucking controller, you know, instead of like So having that kind of option is really nice. You have, like I said, there is more kind of independent freedoms in terms of how I would tweak my gaming experience.
I mean, you still got to
And
worry
if
about. You probably would fare
the
well with this because there's
yeah,
the drivers and
uh,
shit like that. Like I don't think
and,
you
and,
would
and like
mind.
and like for example, like another thing too is where with consoles it's kind of touch and go, but on PC sometimes you may want to go back and play a classic title, you know, and kind of being able to uh, go back and revisit that game and have it run, at a kind of an optimal performance, but also maybe kind of having some new bell and whistles for it. Like I think a great example would be, there was a, I don't think it was done. I'm pretty sure it wasn't done by Valve, but Half-Life. You had these, a group of hardcore fans that kind of basically remade Half-Life One, but with like modern graphics technology. I think it's called Project Black Mesa or something. And like shit like that is really cool. To be able to go back and kind of experience an old game, but in that case, it's kind of created by just a group of, enthusiast players. Of course, which it's all kind of, it's everywhere now, but when you look at Battle Royale, that kind of started as a mod on Arma, on the game Arma 3, I think it was. And that kind of user customization, that was really only available to PC. Of course, you had things like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds and Fortnite and stuff that would come later, and Apex Legends, but that kind of experiment was only really available if you had a personal computer. So I would say it's a double-edged sword. Now, me in my case, if I had the resources, yeah, I would most definitely have one, but it would be like there's a certain experience that is unique to having a PC that you can't get on console.
But
You
I
know,
would say likewise too.
yeah, it's the same thing, vice versa. Like with a console, we've already gone through it, but there's a lot of conveniences and there's a lot of simplicity and using a console and kind of playing stuff on that versus like on a computer, you can sometimes have some kind of weird malfunction where you don't have any sound or your game's crashing when you boot it up or like weird shit like that, you kind of have to troubleshoot, and,
Well,
and of course you're at the mercy of the developer,
just just
how
for
good or how bad they are.
just for the lack of time, I wanted to move on to the next subject really quickly.
Awesome.
Moving on to our next subject, which is it's funny. The Last of Us comes back into play. So, The Last of Us is on sale right now with the PlayStation Essentials. Um, they're cutting games like half off, but I believe The Last of Us is 30% off.
Mhm.
Terry, why do you think that is?
Now, is it The Last of Us Part 2 or is it Part
Part
1?
two, part two.
um, well, you can look at it either way. You can look at it as the, I, I don't know how this works, but, if a game does really well, once it's been out for about 2 months, you know, after about the 2 month marker, that's kind of when you'll start to see a price drop or a discount or whatever. But I've also heard that if a game does really bad, it doesn't sell much, people will drop the price to try and motivate people to pick it up. Um, so
No,
I think numbers wise, I mean, I'm pretty sure that game sold pretty well. So I
initially.
imagine, to like maybe the projection of what they thought versus what happened didn't turn out the same. Like the opening week was pretty good, and then succeeding weeks weren't up to their expectations. So perhaps they're trying to put on a special sale to try and entice people to pick it up. Maybe Sony and or Naughty Dog feels like because of what happened with the story, people are kind of hesitant. So perhaps if they drop the price a little bit, maybe that would encourage people on the fence to pick it up. So.
Um, the reason why I mentioned that is because like there's Twitter fans of this game, Twitter fanboys of either Naughty Dog
Twitter's
or the
Twitter
or
fans.
Twitter fans. So there was a recent article. There was a negative, you know, a negative angle on that.
Hmm.
Ultimately, what game do you know that dropped? That was a big title like that dropped in price.
Ooh, that one's easy. Fallout 76, I think, is a very recent and good
N-
example of a
No, no,
game
no,
that.
no, no. I mean, like one where it did well after. I mean, after 2 months it dropped. But what was the reasoning for Fallout selling like that, or are they putting a sell on Fallout?
Well, Fallout was the exact opposite. There were expectations were high, but it was a crock of shit. So like after the opening week, like the sales have plummeted.
Because you said that maybe they're just doing it just out of normal, you know, normally after 2 months, but I don't really see that happening constantly.
It's a guesstimation. So.
But I don't see that, like if a game sold well, can you give me an example of that? If it sold well and they dropped the price 2 months after, what game did that?
Let me think.
Lord knows it ain't Grand Theft Auto.
Fuck, that's a good question, man. I'd have to look in my. I don't want to waste too much time. I'd have to like look at my trophy list and probably tell you.
It just seems very odd that a game of that caliber drops in price by 30%.
Well, I mean, when did it actually launch? It was in June, right? But do you remember what the date was? Like, was it like
June 20th or something like that, around there?
Yeah. So I mean, here we are in September. So I mean, all of July has passed, all of August has passed.
We're in the beginnings of July. I mean, of
so
September.
we're in the beginning of September. So I mean, I suppose enough time has passed to where, maybe a 20 or 30% discount is probably justified.
And it's not even holiday season. I would imagine if it was doing it, it would be around our holiday season. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the case. It's September. Maybe like November, I would imagine, but not this early. If it sold well, because not even The Last of Us. The reason why I mentioned, I decided to look into the trophy list of The Last of Us, right?
Oh yeah.
And they say, The Last of Us 2 is the most completed game on PlayStation. Going by yeah, it is supposedly. I think 56%, something like that. People don't complete games that much. But I'm like, with that sentimentality, what about Red Dead Redemption? One could even argue that since the game is so linear, that's one of the reasons why it was easier to complete. Another argument is that it didn't sell as many copies. The Red Dead Redemption sold like 20 million. So if 30% of people completed that, that's a totally different number than if The Last of Us just sold 5 million. You know what I mean? And it's not an open world game. It's easier to complete. And it's easy.
I think that with the leaks that happened before the game's release and how it really kind of spread like wildfire and was like the #1 internet gaming topic for a while. I feel like probably a large portion of people that may have been on the fence had kind of figured out that they weren't going to pick that up after kind of finding out what happens in the story. So, I mean, unless you were deliberately doing, kind of blacking out all that information on your own, I think a lot of people kind of heard about it and were like, man, fuck that,
Yeah, but 56% of people completed it, and the numbers are usually very low, around 20 to 30%.
Let me see.
I mean, I'm just telling you what it is. I mean, what are you looking for?
No, okay, so, all right, so it's basically $10 cheaper right now, so it's down 16%. The digital edition is digital deluxe is down 4. Okay, so basically they took the digital deluxe and the standard edition and they just basically cut $10 off of that. So honestly I wouldn't really see that as that's really not that big of a discount. So I'm thinking maybe the game sold closer to their expectations, so they're just, I don't know, maybe thinking that might.
I think it's slowed. I think it's slowed down. But my point is that people completing The Last of Us more so than any other game. That was my point, because it prompted people to check it. Because it was such bad news about The Last of Us not selling well. And that's one of the reasons people decided to find some positive news on The Last of Us and saw that.
Well, I think with The Last of Us, because there's such a strong emphasis on narrative, just the way it's designed, like you're really not going to get your money's worth if you don't complete it. Like it's like buying season. Like typically, that most people would do that if it just sucked and they got sick of it. Now, all jokes aside concerning the Last of Us narrative, I think just the type of game it is, like you're kind of missing out, on your money's worth. Whereas, a lot of open world games, kind of completing them is kind of it's not the point, right? Like that's not like the story is relevant, but it's basically just all the shit you can do and all the time you can put into it. That's just kind of overall you just have a lot of gameplay hours to go through. So even if you don't necessarily beat the story, that doesn't necessarily mean you're missing out on your money's worth. So, I
Right.
think it just has to do with the type of game it is, honestly.
Yeah, that and I don't think it sold as many copies. I think you can reach like if it sold 5 million copies right now, right? That means 2.6 million people beat the game. Half the people. Ultimately, there's a lot of titles in stores right now that's not being purchased.
Hmm.
So, and they can't just knock fucking it in half because that isn't the optics doesn't look good if they do that. But
Well,
they are
I
trying to
also
entice
would say
people.
that probably because the game, feature, like I'm pretty sure those statistics of, looking at how many people don't beat a game, like I think a lot of it is there's so many games that, have a multiplayer feature, and that's really the kind of big thing. Like they don't really even care about their own single player experience. There's probably a lot of people that don't beat the game because they don't even have really any interest in the single player experience. They're just doing it for multiplayer. And that game is, like I'm just saying, I'm kind of curious. Like if we were to look at PS4 exclusives that are single player games, do not have a multiplayer feature. Um,
Or
like
Ghost
what's
of
the percentage
Tsushima. Ghost of
of
Tsushima is like
completing?
30. Is like 30 something percent.
Mm.
Typically, not that many people beat games in general. That's going back to the PS3 era
Yeah.
that we were able since we started tracking it. It's they don't want to beat it. Think about the last topic I want to talk about is again I say this and people think that I'm like joking. Nintendo gets away with every fucking thing. So Nintendo had like a random Nintendo Connect or whatever the fuck they do, right?
Mm-hmm.
You wanna know what it was about? It was
Please.
actually it was about the collection of Mario 64 Mario games. Now I'm not sure if they're remastered to the point where they look like brand new. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I just think they look. I just think there's just high resolution and they just called it a day. But guess how much it cost for Mario 64 that was produced in 1996.
I imagine
Um,
it's probably an outrageous price.
well, how much you think it's worth?
Well, probably $100 or something, man. I don't know.
Well, it's not that bad, but it's close. It's $60 for three of those games.
I'm not surprised.
And everybody's like, man, that's fucked up, man. But I'm gonna buy it though. I'm gonna get my
Well,
fix of
see,
Mario 64.
here's the thing: is that if Nintendo is really good at something, they're really good at kind of controlling the the kind of value of their brand and how much it sells for out on the market. They're very like astute in kind of controlling that.
I wouldn't
Even
even
like when
say
it
astute. I would just say that fucking they're just that damn cocky.
yeah.
Totally oblivious to it.
And also too, I think in terms of Nintendo can get away with doing anything. I
If it was anybody
I
else, they would have
view
got crucified for that shit.
yeah
Well, I would like
I
let's say
view
but
Nintendo.
hold on, wait. Let's say they released the God of War collection for fucking
Okay.
$64. You know what I mean? Like people are like, what the fuck, man? That game old as shit. You know?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, you're releasing some PS2 titles. I mean,
That's a fucking a
uh,
Nintendo 64 title from '96. A 25-year-old game.
I think what like Medieval, for example, what when that launched, that was only like $40, right?
Yeah, but
And
it's
that was
not
like
this.
a full
It's
remake.
yeah, that's a full remake. It wasn't like it was fucking. Oh, it's an upscale version of it. You know what I mean?
Oh, well, okay, this is the thing with Nintendo. Okay, and I dare anyone to argue me on this. When it comes to Nintendo, Nintendo has they kind of have a smaller, the demographic of their kind of dedicated consumer fan base is smaller, but they're a lot more zealous in their, I guess, loyalty or something. Like, I mean, even if Nintendo does
Even a
something kind
Metal
of
Gear Solid
shady,
collection, even a Metal Gear Solid
yeah,
collection was in fucking $60. You know what I mean?
um, they can do things, but it's kind of like even if like when it comes to like overpricing or something, they know that they have that demographic of dedicated Nintendo fans, and they're gonna buy it anyways.
I'm gonna fucking wet
So
their coochies with it. Ridiculous. I mean, I don't know. I've always said this before. I was like, man, these motherfuckers can get away with anything. I'm not saying that they're
yeah,
bad games, but it's definitely not $60 worth. If they're individual games, if you add them all up together, if they don't equal $60, then you have a fucking problem. Period. Oh,
I don't. I mean, it's just Nintendo. When it comes to the value of their brands and stuff, they just, they don't fucking. They're
care.
not selling that shit for cheap. Like you're gonna pay a premium. So
You would think it's like blue meth.
maybe. I mean, perhaps it is. I mean, to a degree, the service and what they provide, it must be good enough for these people to buy it. You know,
I
um,
just think it's nostalgia, man. People are just super nostalgic.
well, I get that, but I'm just saying, Nintendo at least does these some things good enough for people to go ahead and fork over the money anyways. That's why I said, it's a smaller demographic, but it's more focused and they're more zealous, about Nintendo stuff. So
You know, I'm not disputing that. You're absolutely right. But enjoy your fucking 25-year-old game just based off of nostalgia when you first got your fucking N64 at the age of 8, I guess.
well, the way they see it, they're gonna have a superior experience on their 20-year-old game versus your trash system. So I mean, that's the kind of optics they go by.
True, true. Well, that is all the time we have for this gaming pulpit session here. Let me know in the comments what you liked or disliked about the video, and if you liked it, so would be appreciated. Not only that, if you could just give the video a like, if you do like the commentary. But anyway, toodaloo.